Welcome everybody, it is day 3 of the first ever Officer Club Clash. We're going to be breaking down the third place game as well as the finals. Now keep in mind, we have a new structure here where you're going to be getting points going into the OCC Ultimate in a couple of months. So a lot of points on the line today. 12 points for 4th place, 15 points for 3rd, 18 for 2nd, and 25 for 1st. I am your host, Christo. I am joined by Darkness and by J King. We'll have Spooz with us in just a bit as well. Let's bring up the bracket and see exactly what's going down today. So there you have it. We have our bronze match and our grand finals ready for you. First up, we'll have the bronze match. We've got Berto taking on Freddie. Berto winning a heck of a first matchup against Noan, unfortunately succumbing to Tiger's all-air lineup. So we're going to have Berto in that first match. I mean, Freddie also having a phenomenal first round, defeating J King 2-0. And then Freddie losing 2 heads. So we got Freddie and Berto coming up right now. And then we're going to have Tiger and Head in just a few moments. So stick around. Heck of a day. Our first ever final day of the Officers Club Clash. Gentlemen, let's take a look at our players. There you have Mr. Finger Guns himself, Berto Burrito. I mean, I'm joking. I do love that picture, though. Maybe it's just me. Finishing first last season, 81% win rate, the bombing raid. J King, we discussed this yesterday, that maybe the bombing raid is the right choice for the favorite card. Maybe it's not. Nonetheless, we're going to have Berto going and bringing these 3 fairly standard medalists to this 3rd place matchup. Darkness, why don't you walk us through his deck lineup? Just, we've seen it a couple times if you've caught the other 2 Clash events so far. But Darkness, why don't you give us an overview of what Berto is bringing here today?
Of course, Christo. Berto is bringing the typical aggro lineup. He chose the top meta decks, and these will be highlighted in the next meta report. Oops, I spoiled. And he's very good at those. Not only he took like the currently strongest decks on the ladder and among the tournaments, but he also chose decks he's really good with. First, it's US-German frontline, and very fast and snowballing deck, focusing around early units with 1 credits, 2 credits, like the Greyhound, Red Devils, Combat Engineers, to get something into the frontline and make usage of that with Blitzkrieg and the Shermans. Second, he has the Brit Air, a very popular choice among KARDS esportler. Brit Air is very versatile and also very aggressive. Look at that curve, it's highlighting the 1 credit cards definitely. And the game plan is to develop a support line of airplanes, of fighters and bombers, buffing those with close air support, and just overrunning and overcoming your opponent with pure force and power. And air superiority, of course, lovely small removal for 1 credit as well. And the 3rd deck is an it's like the aggro deck of KARDS, because J aggro is very fast, very aggressive, and basically all in, sending small aggressive units into the front line again and again, grinding the opponent down with orders. Of course, burn to the little infantry units, and of course, as a first signal regiment, dealing additional damage.
Right on. I would like to point out that Berto is bringing a single Akita regiment that last OCC we cast together. He complained thoroughly about how it always misses its target, and in the semifinals we did in fact see it hit a 3 health unit instead of a 2 health unit, which may just have kept them alive for 1 more turn. Don't know if it would have changed the game, but the Akitas definitely do not like Berto all that much. All right, let's take a look at our second player. We've got Freddie here appearing in what I believe is his first OCC. We've got the deck list here. Now, J King, you had gone head-to-head with Freddie early on. Why don't you walk us through it, since you've got a little bit of a more in-depth knowledge, maybe, of what he's bringing.
Yeah, we've seen these decks before. Of course, he has his Soviet Italy self-damage, Italy ally being used exclusively for this Mare Nostrum. 3 copies. The deck works functionally like the traditional Soviet Japan self-damage, which we haven't seen a lot of since nerf to 34th. But this version, crucially, instead of running the Scouting Party and the 33rd Recons for card draw, it runs 2 copies of 5-year plan, which you are able to afford to play because it has the extra healing in the Mare Nostrums. Very fun deck. I've bought it before myself. He's actually interestingly running the Petliakovs as well in this, traditionally run in the Japan ally again, but I've not seen it before in the Italy ally, so this is going to work out pretty well. I mean, it's gotten him this far already. Then he has Japan-France resistance, which, I mean, we've seen a lot of Jagro in this tournament. This is the only resistance deck, the only France deck, the only Japan-France deck, and this is a very old tournament deck. It's been around for a while. Both Darkness and I are intimately familiar with Japan-France in tournaments. And this version, it's adapted to the nerfs, the old nerfs to long-range recon, and sort of the meta around the number of French cards you can run. We see him only running 2 Defend in Depths, so he can run the triple call to the colonies, and then to make up for that lack of removal, he's running 2 Blade of the Samurais, which is a very interesting tech choice. And then, last but not least, the deck we all know and love. It is Britain, Japan, Air. Of course, this is sort of the meta deck. Everyone's used to it. And if there were a ban, maybe this would be banned, but this is the third place match, so there's no bans. He's going to be allowed to play this. We're going to see air from both players, and it's going to be awesome to watch.
Right on. That means Berto's got to deal with air and also has to deal with resistance, which, while you and Darkness may love it, I know a lot of players not so much. So, Berto's definitely going to have a heck of a matchup here. Let's take a look at Freddie's player card as well. Freddie hailing from Argentina, I believe, if my stats are correct, and I know, Darkness, you're, somewhat of a cards historian, but I think it's the first time we've had 2 South American players in an OCC. Having both Freddie here as well as oh my gosh, why am I blanking now on the second player with Moy? Sorry, with Moy. Jeez. So Freddie also went the long route, qualified after finishing 19th in the season, 70% win rate. Nothing to shake a stick at there. So phenomenal player. Gonna have his work cut out for him against Berto Burrito, who finished first. Let's get into the action here. Once again, no bans, so we're going to see all 3 players game, depending on the wins and the losses here, but all 3 decks are available to both players as we get into our first matchup here of the 3rd place for the February Officers Club Clash.
And starting off in game 1, we see Berto on the Japan-German aggro. We've seen him play this deck quite a few times already, and Freddie on the Britain-Japan air. And unfortunately for Freddie, he is starting second. This hand would be significantly better if he was starting first, since he would be able to get one of these bombers out. And starting with the Swordfish, I'm not necessarily a fan of this. I would prefer just to see air superiority, take out the infantry, because this Swordfish can be answered in several different ways. And rather than just playing the 35D, which is good in its own right, Berto is even able to play a second Yokosuka, buffing the attack of the first Yokosuka because it's adjacent, and then a Type 93 in the support line to bring the attack up to 3.
That was a massive start for Berto Burrito. Trading, well, not even trading, but just killing this bomber from Freddie. And the buff Panzer 35T will kill the Swordfish, the Gladiator, and the tank will still survive. Freddie now needs something like AoE, like Empire Strikes, but it's too soon, and he won't even have the card in his hand. So
And that Berto making a bit of a mistake, moving up the Type 93 after attacking with the Yokosuka, so he's missed out on 1 damage from the buffed attack from the adjacency bonus. But Freddie just playing out this Sonya to die on board just to get a little bit of healing out.
the Yokosuka is by Japanese units, by
Yes.
affected.
Yes.
And he moved the type after. Okay.
Yeah. And this Heresy is going to put in some work. It's going to be able to take out 2 units, but I'm so far, I have to say, I'm not a big fan of how Freddie's been playing this matchup. I think it might show a little bit of inexperience because he's just letting these units come out and die. And I think alternatively, had he been saving them, he would be able to draw into an Empire Strikes for a much bigger board clear later in the future. But this is just allowing Berto to put pressure the Raiding Brigade to take out the second Heresy, and Freddie's down to 8 health.
And 3 convoys in his hand. It's definitely not what he needs. Albacore is a little bit of a relief here, killing the tank, the Panzer 35T. But the Albacore won't last long. And the 22nd Infantry Regiment will refill the hand of Berto Burrito while constantly having those aggressive units in the front line and dealing more damage. Even dropping the Panzerbefehlswagen.
And Berto just playing out all of his cards because he knows if an AoE comes out, the Signal Regiment, even if the Befehlswagen dies to some sort of AoE, the Signal Regiment is going to just turn that into damage to Freddy's HQ, and Freddy's down to 5. And
indeed.
This is just game over.
Freddy could kill the Panzerbefehlswagen in the second Raiding Brigade. Technically not dead. Berto only has 2 damage. However, Freddy won't be able to deal with this Raiding Brigade.
Freddy does run Royal Research in his deck, so he does have a little bit of heat that some heirs decks lack, but he does not find it in hand, and the Signal is going to turn this Empire Strikes into, turn it right back around into lethal damage for Berto Burrito, taking game 1.
That has got to be a textbook Jagro game, right? Get everything you need, push it forward, have the Signal Regiment do all the extra work to put that additional pressure. Freddy couldn't even clear the board if he wanted to because he would just die.
Yeah.
I think it came down to turn 1, actually, who started. Because with Freddy being able to deploy a bomber turn 1, but instantly getting killed by Berto, that was the start of the end. So Berto was able to develop a board. If Freddy would have started, he could have played the bomber and killing everything Berto would have played. This would have been much more in his favor.
But going into game 2, we have Freddy's self-damage into Berto's US-German mid-range, and this is traditionally a very, very good matchup for self-damage. So Freddy now with a huge matchup advantage. Let's see if he's able to convert that into a win. Starting off with the Red Dawn, very good option, reducing the cost of this 34th Guards in hand.
Do you think part of it looks like a very good start for Freddy? He even got the second 34th Guards. Just dropping the SU here. Sorry, I interrupted you, Christo.
And I have lost my train of thought, so you're all good. It probably wasn't that important anyway.
Great.
Going for a interesting line, a risky line of dropping the Hellcat onto, which means if it does get removed, if there is another 2 Sickles or another Red Dawn, that's a huge loss. But he knows he's in a rough matchup, so he is taking these risks because he is playing to win, not playing not to lose. And we saw Freddy just went for the SU, so this Hellcat play does pay off. Berto gets the Sherman down. Now he's building up a board of units, but of course it's now Freddy's turn, so he gets to respond to this, and he has a few different ways to do so.
I do like the Bloody Sickle onto the Hellcat, killing the Greyhound with the infantry unit and killing the Sherman with the SU.
There's also the option, rather than playing the Bloody Sickle, he could play the Mare Nostrum to accomplish a similar thing. However, I do like the Bloody Sickle because it reduces the cost and it draws. Freddy choosing rather just to play it much more slower, play out the 34th Guides, and make Berto spend the credits to move up and attack. Freddy's not afraid of these units in the support line.
But now Berto has the option to kill the 456 rifle regiment with the Sherman, and the Sherman will survive. Freddie, I think Freddie should not have given that opportunity to Berto.
Yeah, the frontline deck, Berto is going to take that trade any day if you can just remove frontline's units because, sorry, if you can remove self-damage's units, frontline runs significantly more units. So if you can trade 1-for-1 or even get a 2-for-1 unit trade, that is a big deal for frontline because your units are going to be getting picked off by these orders over and
Bloody
over.
sickle into bloody sickle! That was so strong by Freddie.
Into Red Dawn at the end, which is going to get this second 34th down for free while taking out the entire board and keeping his units alive.
Wow. Wow, that was just amazing from Freddie.
Double half-track is a huge play for Berto this turn because he can send one 34th back to hand, reset its cost to 7, and get the other one out of the line, meaning that it's not going to deal damage, but he chooses to just save the half-track because he knows he can retreat the 34th guide back to hand if it comes out again because it does not have Blitz. He's choosing to just take the damage now and develop the PIR instead.
I think taking the damage is stronger. HP is just a resource, and removing the 34th guards from the battlefield back to hand will reset the deployment cost, which will slow Freddie down much more than just send back to the support line and saving 6 damage.
And if Freddie wants right now, he can push face for 18 with KV in hand. And honestly, I kind of would have liked to see that play because it forces Berto into a situation where if he needs We Can Do It to not die, and if he plays We Can Do It, he can't remove both of these units. So he would need We Can Do It, a trade, and specifically dive bomb. And you put your opponent in a position where they need exactly 2 cards, both of which are 2-ofs in Berto's deck. Instead, he chooses to trade out, play it a little bit safer, play it a little bit slower. But we'll see if this ends up turning around and really losing him this opportunity to win this game.
I would love to see an hero play earlier. Definitely. Freddie does not really has a ton of options here. I mean, he can drop the first rifles again and the Mare Nostrum, killing the Sky Train, getting more board control and more HP, which will allow him to draw more cards with 5-year plan.
At this point, I would prefer to go face. You have the Ura in hand, you have the KV in hand, and has very limited healing. And the Skytrain is it's only a threat in the long term. But with Ura in hand, you don't need to play it for the long term. You can just drop your opponent to 9 health.
That's true. I would love to see the KV1 coming out. Maybe first rifles into the front line and KV1. Freddie does not agree.
He's seen 2 half-tracks, so he thinks this third 34th just play it out for free. I also likely would have preferred to see the KV, and looking at Berto's hand, he definitely would rather play the KV because Berto's hand is all card draw.
Yeah, Berto's cards are all card draw, and Berto needs all card draw to come back into the game. So KV1 is just another win condition, benefiting by Berto's win condition.
And it looks like Freddie is choosing to go for the SU 34th push-up, the other 34th. I would have liked to see the T80 KV push up the other 34th personally. Getting more tanks on the board, setting up for a bigger Ura turn, and you're getting this damage in with the KV over time. Because that's really the power of KV, is damage over time. And Berto doesn't have a lot of ways to deal with it. Essentially, the only way is Hellcat, if he can also take the front line while he's at it. And we've seen one Hellcat go, and it's not exactly an easy job for Berto to take the front line right now.
Definitely not. Stars and Stripes is taking out the SU and dealing quite a lot of damage to the remaining 2 units in the support line. He is on top of that able to clear the front line. So it looks like a very good turn for Berto here. Liberating the front line, being able to establish a minor board presence here. But Freddie has just more options. Finally, KV1 is coming in. He has no other good options but dropping the KV and starting to deal damage.
And Berto's able to play Sherman here. However, that will mean he's taking 4 extra damage from this KV. Third half-track draw doesn't do a lot. He can retreat this 34th out to just slow his opponent down, but it also means that if he takes the front line, then Ura will certainly be lethal.
So not using half track, but trading into the front line looks like the better option. Is we can do it an option and not going for the Sherman?
I mean, I think you need to be able to respond to this KV in the future.
Yeah.
And that's going to require card draw. It's going to require bodies on the board. So I think you just take the 4 extra damage from the KV and go for this line that he's gone for. And now Freddie's getting very close to lethal. He can push 9 damage plus 2 from the KV. He's actually just 1 off lethal this turn.
Maybe Ura is a good idea here. Ura killing the Red Devils, dealing more damage into the HQ. Sending the KV into the front line, or maybe dropping the Petliakov. Seems like a good idea. He can drop the Petliakov, the T80, attack with KV into the front line with Ura and the T80 into the HQ, and having a massive board presence here.
Yeah, I think just, again, dropping your opponent to 1 health with having 3 units on the board. However, he chooses to play it safe, just kill the Red Devils, push up. Berto with the second Hellcat top deck, letting him kill the KV, and this could just turn the entire game on its head, because now Berto can clear the front line, clear 2 of these tanks, he can take out the Petliakov, and that will even let him, I believe that might give him enough credits to push up the 35T to take out the full board. Actually, he will not be able to do so because of the Petliakov.
Is Berto thinking about we can do it?
That might be something on his mind. We can do it. However, we can do it would only heal 1 unless he trades the KV first. He decides to just take out the Petliakov.
I think taking out the Petliakov is a little bit stronger.
Double Ura. And this is just lethal. He has Mare Nostrum double Ura or Bloody Sickle double Ura, and that's just lethal for Freddie if he sees it. He also has Red Dawn double Ura. He can, on the Sherman. There's multiple ways for lethal right here, but he has to see it. And we've seen a lot of players miss lethal with self-damage. Freddie going for the Red Dawn. It looks like he sees it. Double Ura, and there it is. Freddie clutches out the game after some shaky gameplay, I think, throughout the mid-game.
Yeah, we disagreed with a lot of choices Freddie took here, but in the end, he still was victorious over Berto.
So we've got our series tied up at 1 here, moving into to game 3 of our 3rd place matchup. So what are we looking at here? Got a little Brit Air matchup.
Brit Air mirror matchup.
Yeah,
Even
Brit Air mirror
Crystal.
matchup. A very interesting matchup, and one we have not really seen really up until this point in the tournament, because most of the time Brit Air has been banned.
Mm-hmm.
So this might be a matchup players are maybe less familiar with. Freddie looked very uncomfortable on air in game 1. I don't know if that was a specific matchup issue into Jagro. That was just a matchup he was not comfortable or experienced with. Or it might be that he just picked air because it's the best deck, and it's maybe not a deck that he has a lot of time playing on ladder. I'm unsure, but certainly so far, Berto's hand is looking better, at least in the next coming turns.
Yeah, the Archie top deck made Berto's hand so much better. Everything else was a little bit awkward.
We've talked a little bit about going first as well in these mirror matchups. How important is it to go first in a Brit Air mirror here, as we saw Berto was able to, build the board first?
I think it's a lot less important than other matchups like, say, Jagro or US Frontline, because Britain Air has so many ways to come back with these tempo cards, like the Air Superiority coming out very cheap, the Empire Strikes to wipe out a full board, Shelling or Monty to really punish your opponent from going wide and having board control, means that there's a lot more ways for you to come back if you lose the board early. And certainly the person who goes first is going to have the advantage early in the game if they hit their 1-drops. But as we saw, Freddie did not really hit any 1-drops. He did not hit the air superiorities. So despite Berto going second, now he has board control and card advantage, which is certainly working in his favor right now.
I think sometimes going second is even better for Brit Air because you do have 2 extra cards. You do have more options, and if your opponent who's going first runs out of steam and not finding card draw and not being able to keep up the power, the tempo, and loses board control, this is a big disadvantage for you going first in this mirror matchup.
There's also the aspect in this mirror, right, of the front line not being very important. So it's not as if you're playing front line or Jagro where you need to rush that front line and take control of it.
No,
Yeah,
the front line is almost not important at all.
Yeah.
What's a better word for unnecessary? Yeah. In those mirror matchups, the front line is often unnecessary at all. By now, no player used the front line yet. And I think we will need some time to see one player moving up a unit into the front line.
Yeah, and so far this game's just been like this really amusing but awkward maneuvering battle between these gladiators blocking the bombers, these Aichis that you don't exactly want to kill, you want your opponent to trade into, but at the same time you don't want to trade your own Aichi away because you want your opponent to kill it. And here Berto just setting up for the Empire Strikes in hand, killing the Aichi because he knows he can remove it on the following turn. Freddie dropping the Wrath. Which if Berto can find another 1-cost bomber, which he does, this Empire Strikes can just fully clear the board if that's what he chooses to go for. He also just
Swordfish. What other option is better than Swordfish Empire Strikes killing both airplanes?
He could save the Empire Strikes for a bigger play in the future and use Surprise Attack with Sonya to take out the Wrath, but that doesn't feel amazing. And he just decides, I'm gonna play it now. Go for the tempo, don't go for the value. Huge board control, sending it back to Freddie saying, it's your turn, you need one of your board clears, you need one of your pins, you need something that is not Sexton that dies on board. He knows Berto has Surprise Attack in hand, so he knows this Sonya is going to take out the Sexton. And this is sort of the same style of play that I disagree with Freddie going for on Air versus Jagro, of playing out cards that he knows are going to die on board, rather than maybe playing more conservatively and waiting to use your cards on turns where you can do something more proactive, something that works better in your favor. And Berto, actually, with the Piracy, is able to take out both cards.
Very strong line of Berto here. Relatively open to Empire Strikes and a board clear, but Freddie does not has it when he needs it. Albacore is able to pin the second Piracy, and with Surprise Attack he's able to kill it.
And once again, he's just playing out all of the cards in his hand. He's not holding up Ultra, which means he's not getting the card draw. And with Albacore down, means even with an Empire Strikes top deck, he doesn't have a bomber to combine with it to take out the Sonya. And yeah, it's very difficult to imagine Freddie coming back in this game anymore from this point. It's certainly limited the options he has to do so. He needs to find a lend-lease into bombers and Empire strikes.
Berto's able to kill the Albacore with the Archie, kills the Type 94 TK with the other two bombers, and just go for the convoy to get extra card draw.
Yeah, and if the convoy finds a close air support, it keeps his units alive better into board clears, and it makes some of those trades work a little bit better. So he could just start with the convoy. Look at what's in your deck. You have huge card advantage. You know your opponent can't be holding up Ultra. And those are both very good finds for Berto. He now is out of card draw, but with 5 cards in hand, including some of the highest impact cards in his deck with Spitfire, HMS, and Shelling. It's looking great for him.
Freddie finding convoys. This is very important, but close air support is not doing a lot. And this pin won't do a lot as well. Freddie has to activate Ultra here. Just because he needs the card draw. Regardless of what order Berto is maybe playing.
But unfortunately, because he played the Type 94, it's sort of into a situation where Berto's going to know the Ultra is up. Because Freddie otherwise would have played the surprise attack on the Ichis, slow him down. However, just because your opponent knows you have Ultra, they still have to play an order into it eventually. And Berto's hand does not have a lot of options to... There's no throwaway orders. There's no like air superiority that he doesn't necessarily care about that can just trigger that. So Berto's likely just going to play around it by not playing any orders altogether.
I think the Spitfire is just the best option here instead of any order. He's able to clear the board and setting up 16 damage for the next turn. So Freddie is... Wait, Freddie's able to pin a unit and attack with Wellington into Spitfire.
Yep, Freddie is able to stop 12 damage from coming out this turn by surprise attacking the Aichi, trading Wellington into the Spitfire. I don't mind this play because you do need card draw to get back into the game. So at this point, your best chance is Ultra does trigger on something. It draws you into an HMS, and then your natural draw is an Empire Strikes. Because at that point, that's the type of play he's going to need to come back into this game. And unfortunately, that's not what he gets. He is able to stay alive on board for one more turn, but he just throws in the towel. And I mean, fair enough. He would need a miracle to come back in that game. And Berto takes the 2-1 lead.
Here you got Freddie coming back again with his Brit Air list in this deciding game. And I think it's so interesting because, Jake, you brought this up before, that it seems almost like Freddie's not entirely comfortable with the list. Tends to be maybe overcommitting on the board a little bit or playing a little bit more than he should. And I feel like in a variety of card games I've played, you typically see that from somebody who's more of an aggro player, right? They're used to kind of dumping their hand on the board and pushing. But Freddie's shown us with his deck selection and his success thus far that that's not exactly his style. So I wonder what's causing him to kind of overcommit in some of these situations with his Brit Air list.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I would suspect that Air is not the deck that he used to ladder with necessarily, or maybe even the deck he brought to OCC qualifiers. And when he made top 8, he just brought it because, well, that's what everyone else in top 8 does. I think there's 6 or 7 Brit Japan Airs in this tournament, and I mean, this just goes to show it's one thing for a deck to be tier 1, an insane meta deck, but it's another thing for the deck to be easy. Air is not an easy deck to play by any means, and yeah, already Freddie, first 2 turns so far have somewhat played themselves, just play the 1-cost unit on 1, 2-cost unit on 2, and now it's turn 3 and you're suddenly hit with a very hard decision. What do you do? Is it hold up the Ultra? Is it attack with Aichi into the Red Devils now, get the damage in? Do you cast, go face? Yeah, the difficult questions already being asked by Berto's US German mid-range deck because he's playing it very slow. He's gone for the Red Devils, the PIR, these infantries in the support line with these high health, sticky infantries in the support line that can very quickly turn into sticky infantries in the front line.
It's a very hard decision Freddie had to choose turn 3. But I agree with this one. Playing close air support, making those airplanes stronger, not being able to attack the Red Devils again, but attacking into the HQ. Now Freddie is able to kill the Red Devils, and that's definitely necessary here. On top of that, maybe trading into one unit. Killing the Red Devil is an easy choice, but going to attack into the HQ or killing 132nd Infantry Regiment is a little bit harder.
Yeah, there's a lot of punishes either way. If you just move up the Gladiator, it gets punished by 5th Rangers. If you just go face, there's some punishes because you currently don't have an AoE. So if suddenly all these 30 seconds get pushed up, they can start getting buffed by PIR. And then if you trade, of course, your opponent could just have Whirlwind, get a free hit into your Gladiator.
A lot of different options. Now, he got punished for attacking into the HQ because there are 3 units and Freddie can't take them out. So the best choice would have been killing one of the 32nd Infantry Regiments to not looking into those threats against his support line and getting his bombers traded away.
And I think it's important to not just focus on maybe these missteps from Freddie, but also Berto is not giving him an easy game to play. Berto easily could have just gone for 30 seconds, push up 30 seconds, play it like you play any other matchup, but Berto is doing this very slow, calculated maneuvering of keeping the infantries back, but playing a lot of them so to allow for these turns where he pushes up more infantries to the front line than the air deck is able to deal with at once. Berto is not making this easy for Freddie at all.
No, I do like the close air support killing the Red Devils, but Blitzkrieg looks very nice here. Panzer 35T getting the cost reduced to 0 to operate, going into the front line, and Blitzkrieg will be able to take out both buffed units. Of course, they will spawn another bomber with smokescreen, but just removing those buffs could be worth it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think Blitzkrieg is often a card that can be difficult to use in this matchup. Berto choosing actually just to push up the PIR, take out the Aichi, but leave the Gladiator up on the board. And this does risk getting punished by an Empire Strikes. But as we spoke before about, same way Berto played into the self-damage with this US German by playing the Hellcat on its own on turn 3, is if you're in a worse position, you're in a difficult matchup, you sometimes just have to take big risks. And this is a huge risk from Berto's perspective of just an Empire Strikes dealing with this whole board. But unfortunately for Freddie, that's not what he has in hand. He is able to destroy and pin the entire front line. And strategic bombing top deck on turn 6 is huge.
Just killing the Type 9040K, the Archie, and the Gladiator, leaving Freddie with nothing but -1 credit slots also. He can't even drop the Spitfire and the Ultra.
Yeah, he can't do Wellington attack into the 35T. Ultra, Monty doesn't draw a card if he plays it. He's a credit off Lend-Lease. That, I mean, of course, destroying 3 units is a huge strategic bombing, but that extra credit slot reduction is coming in huge. That is very unfortunate for Freddie. And the half track on the Spitfire, push up 5th Rangers. Monty's going to be a pretty good answer to this, but he needs something after that Monty.
Wellington killing the 5th Rangers, looking good. He's not doing it.
And interestingly, he doesn't play Cass either. I would have loved to see the Cass because it protects Spitfire from Hellcat, and it protects the Sonya from Whirlwind or a 35T.
Not going for the Wellington and not killing the 5th Ranger gives Berto a great opportunity for we can do it. He can play it with Whirlwind into the front, and we can do it on all units. Now this 5th Rangers is super hard to kill because Freddie has a Sonya but no pin currently. And this is looking tough to deal with.
And Freddie, actually, if there wasn't the Whirlwind, Freddie would have, and it wasn't the We Can Do It, Freddie would have just had lethal with Wellington, close air support, attack with everything. That would have just been the 15 damage necessary, but Berto had the Whirlwind and the We Can Do It. Very intelligent play from Berto, recognizing how low on health he was, the potential threat of this Spitfire.
How low on health? He was on 15. This is
well, low on health, relatively speaking to the amount of damage Brit Air can put out. Because for the Spitfire on the board, 15 health goes away really, really quickly. It just seems to evaporate, really.
Yeah, the Fury is a lot of damage.
But speaking about health just evaporating, Berto finds the Blitzkrieg on 3 units plus the 99, and that's just lethal. Berto takes it 3-1 over Freddie, beating Britain Japan Air 3 times.
Wow. And to your point, J. King, like, just health evaporating, you're in a scenario like that where you think, okay, I can probably hold off for a couple more turns, and then you can't.
Yeah, and we saw Berto not play that Blitzkrieg on turn 5, choosing to keep it in hand, and that's one of the benefits of keeping it in hand is if Britain Air doesn't have a pin on 1 turn or doesn't have a board clear on 1 turn, suddenly, instead of trading out units, you're able to just go face for 15 and win the game.
Well, like you said, that comes back to that, holding onto your cards until they can be more impactful than just playing them because they happen to be on curve and, oh, maybe I can clear a unit or two. So huge impact there by Berto holding onto the Blitzkrieg until it was actually lethal.
Yeah, and congrats to Berto for the 15 points, I believe, for getting 3rd, and I hope we see Freddie again. And I think he has room to improve, but I mean, he made it to top 8 once. I think he can definitely make it there again. And now I think he sees what he needs to work on, maybe.
Absolutely. So 15 points for Berto, you're spot on there, J. King. 12 points for Freddie. So, hopefully we do see him again. Has set himself up nicely to qualify for the OCC Ultimate. Maybe one more good showing in next month's OCC, and he'll be up there as well. Very curious to see if maybe get some reps in with Brit Air, and that might change things, or just brought it assuming it'd be banned all day long, which is not a terrible choice either. Before we wrap this match up and look at our second semifinal, Darkness, anything you'd like to add here?
No, J. King covered it perfectly, and just congrats to Berto. It was definitely a strong, solid day for him. He did not really he didn't do mistakes. He had a clear plan, executed this very impressively. Nice.
Right on. Let's bring up the bracket as we've got through our 3rd place matchup here, and we'll be getting ready for our finals. We have got Tiger and Head for the grand finals of the February Officers Club Clash. It is time for the finals. We have made it, friends. It is Tiger versus Head to determine the first winner of the Officer Club Clash. And J. King, I believe you brought this up in an earlier matchup. We're going to have somebody who has never won any type of OCC anything before. Is that correct?
Yes. Tiger has gotten 2nd in the OCC 2 occasions, I believe. So I'm sure he's itching to finally get one in a victory. 1st place, and Head, of course, he has played in a couple OCCs before, but is probably most well known for getting 2nd in the World Championship. And 2nd in World Championship, maybe even more prestigious than first in an OCC, but I'm sure he'd love to get first written down next to his name in any type of event.
Absolutely. You see these players who have participated so often in these events that I'm just like, yeah, I assume they won at some point, right? They've been around for so long, but it's really interesting to see what somebody like Head can achieve without technically ever winning an OCC. But this is what I appreciate casting with folks like yourselves, because I know Spooz has like a whole notebook somewhere with every historical piece of KARDS knowledge that he can break out at any instant.
I mean, at least I have a list with the OCC winners. I know that J King did do it a little bit deeper and also has second and third places just documented. So it could be worse than me.
I love it. I love it because I appreciate having that perspective. I think it's so much fun to be able to keep track and see who's done what, and watching some of these folks like, even Freddie today, who had a great showing in his first time around, where he ends up in, 6 months down the line. Is he, at the next OCC or Officer Club Championship Ultimate, which will be coming in just a couple months, as these players try and get their ranking points to make sure they qualify. So let's dive into it. Let's start taking a look at these players and their decks. We've seen them a couple times over this weekend, but first up, we have Tiger here, finishing with almost a 75% win rate, finishing 5th this season. So getting that guaranteed spot here in the OCC. I mean, we've seen everybody from Berto at like over 80%, Tiger at 75%. These are wild numbers in a card game where going first and card draws are so dependent or can have such a big impact on the match. Having a 75% win rate just goes to show how strong all of the players who played over this weekend are. And Tiger is no exception here, as J King, you mentioned a few times that he's performed quite well. So let's dive into Tiger's list and get a little refresher if you have missed the previous 2 days of Clash. Here is what Tiger is bringing to the table. Spooz, why don't you walk us through Tiger's 3 decks?
Yeah, Tiger. I mean, we are for a few months or even years, we're talking now that air is very strong in cards, a very strong archetype. And Tiger is just bringing this just to the top, and he's bringing 3 air lists here today, starting with Brit Japan Air, one of the well-known and most known archetypes in the game. We've seen it a lot of times with the new... Wait, he's not even playing the new IG. Okay, that's very interesting, but still a very, very strong list, nevertheless, and the one we know the best. Then we've seen in one of the, I think it was the January OCC, where I'm not sure it was Tiger or somebody else who just brought Japan, Britain as an archetype, also kind of air deck with the 0 in it, and just flipping it around, playing the Swordfish, the very strong early cards from the Britain nation with the Albacore. Unfortunately, no close air support, but I think it was just because there is not enough space in the deck to fit these in. Also, one supply shortage in the deck. That's a very interesting tech choice. But overall, maybe an archetype that can also just be a very good air deck in the meta, and also contestant for Brit Japan Air. But the third one is an air list. I'm excited to see in action. I haven't seen it in this variant so far. It's just Soviet Britain Air with Pedlyakov, and then you have the Blood Red Sky to just buff all these Soviet air units. And then you just have all these strong Britain cards like the Empire Strikes that has high synergies with the Polycarpovs and the Swordfish. And it's looking really interesting, and I can't wait to see this one in action. And I just a really, really big compliment to Tiger here to just doing the approach of being 3 air lists. And he's in the final, so maybe not the best choice, the worst choice, sorry.
Right on. So let's take a look now at Tiger's opponent. Again, we've seen some of these lists before. We've talked about the players before. I don't want to dive too much into depth. I want to get to the action. I want to know who's going to win this Officers Club Clash. So we do have Head here again, 77% win rate, 359 total matches coming in at that cutoff of 6, but has shown that absolutely deserves a spot in this OCC. and we'll have J King break down Head's lists here as we bring them up on screen.
Yeah, so Head again he's on the Japan-German aggro, just very straightforward. The only, I suppose, differences when you're looking at pairing two different Jaguar lists is what are they running in that 3K slot? Are they Shinhodos? Are they running Mitos? And how many orders are they running? Head is on triple Shinhodo and the 3-order package of Desperate Measures, Bombing Raid, and Feigned Retreat. So pretty standard here. Then moving on to his second deck, he has again, pretty standard-looking Britain-Japan air deck. This one slightly different than Tiger's Britain-Japan air. This one is running the Aichi, which was recently changed and has been proving quite powerful card. And interestingly, he has one copy of the Nate, which is a card I don't think I have ever seen before in any air deck, let alone, actually, I don't think I've ever seen it in an OCC, ever. So that's very interesting. Just a single copy. Otherwise, the deck looking pretty standard. It seems that he's fit in that Nate at the cost of a Sonya, which I'm sure a lot of people will have a lot of discussions about that in the competitive circles. I would certainly lean towards 2 Sonyas myself, but I mean, Head's gotten here, and we'll see that Nate's certainly going to help him against the bombers of Tiger's triple air lineup. And last but not least, we have Head on Soviet France Control. This is a deck that I'm a huge fan of. It's basically just a lot of guards, and it's very unit heavy, and the point is slowly build up a board that's going to increase in size with cards like Rima, and also just as your curve gets later into the game, you start dropping these very powerful Soviet elites, 272nd Guards, KV, the Naval Brigade, the 39th Rifles. Interestingly, though, it does seem to be more geared towards beating decks like Jagro, decks like US-German mid-range with Petliakovs, Hammer. So it's going to be interesting to see how well this competes into the all-air lineup of Tiger.
And you know, we've talked about the bans before and all that. Obviously, the finals, no bans here. All 3 of these decks are coming out. J King, when we had previously gone through Tiger's lineup, you did mention they're all air, but one was tweaked a little bit more ground, one was tweaked a little bit more to face an air deck. Do you think that determining which list he plays first is going to be really important in this matchup to make sure he gets what he wants out of these?
I think if I were in Tiger's position, I would just start off with Japan Air. It's the most versatile. Arguably, it's just the strongest on its own. And you can start off with that, and then once you see who wins the first couple of games, you see what's been brought first by your opponent, you start to get more information to play around. Should I bring the one tech towards ground units, the one tech towards air units? But in the end, I think this matchup might just come down to the 2 Soviet decks from these players. I think it's going to be, I think those are arguably the weakest decks against each other's lineups. Not weakest overall, but just weakest against each other. So I think might come down to who can get a win on those Soviet decks.
I mean, Spooz, looking at these 2 lists, obviously they're, you know, we saw a lot of, as we went through this tournament, a lot of like, yeah, they're bringing 3 meta decks. They're bringing, you know, mostly meta decks. We got a little bit of a fresh look here in the finals. Any thoughts around how these 2 opponents are going to kind of fare against each other's lineup?
Yeah, I mean, J King already summarized it pretty well. It might just come down to the Soviet decks in the end, because I think the other decks can just beat each other. So yeah, it might just be who's starting better into this best of 5, who's just having the better pick. I completely agree with J King. I think both just probably bringing Brit Japan Air first, and then you just see how you progress from that one on. If you lose, you just probably bring it again. If you win, you look what other decks is your opponent is having left. So yeah, it might just come down to how is the first match going, and from there on, anything can happen, I guess.
Well, let's find out as we get into this first match to determine who will be the OCC champ for February, taking home 25 big old points in an attempt to qualify for the Officer Club Championship Ultimate.
And we see Tiger is bringing his Britain-Japan Air in game 1, favoring the versatility, and we see Head on his Japan-German aggro, and arguably this is his most versatile deck into this matchup as well, because his own air deck could be potentially targeted by the Soviet air deck. So each of them bringing the decks they're probably the most comfortable on and most versatile into this matchup. Fortunately for Tiger, he is starting first and with a bomber, which is going to very much hurt Head's overall game plan. He can't really go for this cavalry. It does pull the Befelswagen, so it could get 2 units into the front line, but there's the worry of air superiority, he chooses to just go for the errato that he drew.
Yeah, pretty important draw for him. Otherwise, he would have had a really not so great turn 1. Sure, 15's cavalry just bringing an additional Befehlswagen to the front line would have been okay. But with the Ardu, he just blocks this Sonja, followed up by a Type 93 potentially next turn. He can also just clear it for free. And yeah, this Ardu was pretty important. Also gave him a draw of the Feigned Retreat. So Head with a pretty comfortable starting hand here. Or pretty comfortable start into that match, to say better.
But looking into Tiger's hand, Head certainly gotten the best of the first 2 turns, but Tiger has exactly the cards you want to see if you're in this situation. He has the HMS Illustrious, and he has the Empire Strikes, and it looks like he's set up an early Empire Strikes on turn 4 before Head is put into a position where he could potentially answer these bombers. Because right now, he really doesn't have an answer to any of them. His best play is, I mean, he can move Nikita to the front line, to go for the destruction effect to try to deal damage to one of these bombers. He can move up a cavalry regiment and attack with the errato to get some damage in now, but no matter what he does, this Empire Strikes can come down next turn to wipe his entire board.
Is there ever a world where you just go 15's cavalry to the front line with the Befehlswagen, and then you also move the errato to the front line? Is that ever a play to protect them from the errato protection from the swordfish?
I definitely think that is a potential play that he can go for. Moving the errato into the front line to protect your ground units from the attack of the bombers is a very high level play, which could work very well. That would be punished by Empire Strikes in this situation, though. So on the other hand, Head's not putting a ton of pressure on these bombers, so he's really giving Tiger the time to buff these, take the trades he wants to, and save this Empire Strikes for a more meaningful turn, because Head does not have any Blitz tanks in his hand at the moment. I think he might just be trying to buy time to potentially try into these.
Yeah, and Tiger basically gets everything he needs right now. He even has one of these surprise attacks to just pin a potential key 83. And this Empire Strikes make it really hard for Head to develop a board here. Sure, he does not know that Tiger has it in hand right now, but there's always the potential. So Head cannot really go wide here. Found another Akita now. Akita might be a really strong way to deal with these bombers. At least get him out of the board and then develop a front line there. So it makes it harder for Tiger to just develop bombers on his hand.
I think I'd like to see Head go for just pushing up 2 Akitas. It's not perfect. They can be removed. It does pull out the Befehlswagen, but the destruction effect of these Akitas threatens Tiger board quite immensely. And Tiger does not know that Head drew Feigned Retreat off the errato. Tiger, in his mind, still thinks it could be a Desperate Measures, it could be a Bombing Raid. Both of these cards are in his mind when he's making these trades.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's also very likely, since you mentioned in the deck, just since we took a look at the decks, there are only 3 orders in the deck, so it's very likely that Head has Desperate Measures or Bombing Raid here. So Tiger really has to play around that one, and as you said, 2 times 2 damage from the Akitas. It's very likely that at least one of those bombers might die from that, combined with one of those orders. But we know that it's Feigned Retreat. Tiger found air superiority here. Not really needed at this point.
And he has 2 ways to remove all of these units, and he's almost certainly going to remove all of these units. He can either just trade out twice and play an air superiority. He could even trade out twice and go for a surprise attack if he doesn't want to trigger the destruction effect of one of these Akitas. However, none of this lines up quite well. Jaco still has a lot of cards. They have an order. If this Akita, depending on how these Akitas hit, you could potentially lose both your bombers. And Tiger's got to be a little bit worried about just a massive flood turn following the potential destruction of both these bombers. So I would expect Tiger goes for trading off and keeping the Empire Strikes, and that's exactly what he does. The Head plays the Shinodo before we even
That was the fastest Shinodo I've ever seen. Did it fly exactly directly from the deck into the front line, or what was that? Top deck into the front line. Wow. Okay, that was a good way to remove one of the swordfish. Now Tiger is left with only one of them with 1 HP, but has a 1 credit Wellington in hand.
Now, all these orders have been slowly decreasing the cost of this Wellington that's been in hand since turn 1. And, I mean, Head showing off his insane APM, which is necessary to climb into these top 6 positions, but is it going to be enough to respond to the 2 additional bombers plus Empire Strikes and Lend-Lease in hand to refill afterwards? I mean, we'll see. He chooses to play the other Swordfish. He's correctly positioned everything, and Head likely going to drop the Sendai here. But he can't take out 2 of these bombers, which means Empire Strikes will fully clear the board and also kill the Sendai if the Sendai does come out.
Yeah, this is not looking great for it. Is there any place or is there any thought that Head might just drop the feigned retreat here, or is he going to lose the match with this? Just because there's 7 damage on board, right, from Tiger there.
I think from Head's point of view, realistically, you can't play Feigned yet this turn because your opponent has 2 cards in hand plus the surprise attack. So the odds they have specifically Empire Strikes somewhat lower. The 3rd Swordfish draw, or actually this is the 2nd Swordfish plus HMS Illustrious, and the Sonia. So either way, another bomber draw from Tiger if he wants to go for it. This is going to bring back the Wellington as well, so we can push phase for 4, or push phase for 3 and play the Swordfish. Although if he was going to do that, he should have considered playing the Swordfish first, so he's likely just going to attack with the Wellington. And Head, at this point, he's taking a lot of damage. He's not going to live a whole lot longer after playing this Feigned Retreat. And, I mean, at this point, you have to play Feigned Retreat and just hope you draw into all of your 35 Ts and a Type 93. Also within the correct order of drawing an infantry first. The window for victory for Head is narrowing quite a lot.
That is 7 damage this turn, could bring Head down to 2. And yeah, this Lend-Lease could just shut down, even if Head just deals with this board now, if he has the perfect draws. Tiger has so many options to just refill his hand and find the 2 missing damage out of that. She just needs 1 more Empire Strikes.
I think absolute best case scenario for Head would be 35T or Whirlwind into like a bombing raid to clear. 35T into Whirlwind, but that's not going to be enough to clear everything, because these units do have operation cost. And yeah, that's just going to be game 1 going towards Tiger, with his Britain-Japan taking it over Head's Japan-German.
And Britain-Japan just showing once more how strong it is. Even against a very, very strong Jaguar archetype, it can just dominate very, very hard. And with the perfect start, Swordfish into turn 4 Empire Strikes potential, it is just unbeatable for Head in this first match.
And this is a interesting situation in game 2. Tiger bringing the Japan Britain deck, the one that's arguably much better, into Jaguar than, say, the Soviet deck, expecting Head maybe to stick to the Jaguar, but Head switching it up, bringing his own Britain-Japan air. This is a pretty favorable matchup, I'd like to think, for Head, especially at this point in the game. You are very happy you're not seeing Soviets on the other side of the board. So I think Head has the favorable matchup, but, I mean, we've seen matchups go every which way so far this tournament. There's definitely no saying that Head's just going to win this, because he has the favored matchup. Going first is good, but not as important in air mirrors as, say, US frontline mirrors, Jaguar mirrors, and just 2 Type 94s coming out.
And both players also have Swordfishes in hand, kind of similar starting hand from both players, but Head just with the advantage of going first, but on the other hand, also having already a current disadvantage. And 2 Lend-Leases in hand and the convoy is not really how you want to start into a match.
Yeah, you're very happy finding these cards in the later turns. You're happy that these cards are not in the bottom quarter of your deck or so, but these are not the cards you want to see in hand on by turn 3. Tiger
Not really.
definite hand advantage. He can play the Aichi, he can Swordfish and the air superiority. I mean, yeah, despite going second with the sort of switching roles where Head is going to have the card advantage very quickly. However, he has lost the board advantage that he had from going first.
There comes the Nate. Very, yeah, one copy of it. When I just saw it, I was also wondering what could this be for. I remember a ladder match where one of my opponents just got a signal regiment out of it. I'm not sure if this is the reason why Head maybe has this in the deck. Also, it's a fighter. It can just provide into this air archetype, but it can also give you a type 93. So it has kind of some potential, but yeah, we will see if it has enough impact to be worth 2 credits to play in that list.
Yeah, and we're seeing Head's fortunes have turned around quite a bit with all these fighter draws, the air superiority. He's just bringing it back, and with 2 Lend-Leases in hand to refill, Head's position looking a lot better than it was just 2 turns ago. And yeah, as you mentioned, if he is able to get a signal regiment off of this Nate, that could be quite huge. However, there's a lot of one cost Japanese units. I think it's probably around 10. Give or take 1. But there's some interesting options. He can get a Sonya, he can get another Type 94. But there's also other cards like Himeji Regiment that he is definitely not going to be looking for.
So do we actually know how the odds are? Each card, or is each card just equal in getting it? So the Signal Regiment has the same odds as, I don't know, Type 93, or is it just less likely to get elites out of it?
I believe each option has the same chance of happening.
Okay, not too bad.
Yes, it being his turn, it means that he can control the trades, which he's done so far. But how to use these remaining 3 credits is kind of awkward, because Dina's a fighter. It's going to be able to attack the Sonya, especially if it gets buffed. You don't want to overcommit into an Empire Strikes. It is very awkward having 2 Lend-Leases in hand, because these cards just can't be played yet. And Tiger has quite a few options here on how he wants to respond to this board.
He has the Empire Strikes in hand, which can just kill all of these 3 air units from Head. What else can he do?
I mean, he could play the 0. However, that is going to be sacrificing the 0, the Sonya surprise attack combo. Because Sonya does say units that are attacked, it does not need to deal damage. So even if it dies to the ambush of the 0, it will still activate the effect and trade 1 for 1. So there is a definite risk to just playing the 0. So we see Tiger taking the trade with the Dina. He might just take the trade with the Aichi and play a Swordfish. Take the trade with the Aichi and passes altogether. He's choosing to play very conservatively.
I also don't want to overcommit into a potential Empire Strikes from Head there. So a very tactical match here right now. And there comes the Shibata Regiment. Not really what you want to have out of a Nate there. That unit is probably going to touch nothing on that board here.
And I suspect we'll see the Empire Strikes come out now, since give Tiger a full board clear. If he attacks into the Aichi first, or if he wants to use the air superiority and get down a Swordfish while he's at it. Tiger's in an interesting position because he has massive card advantage. But he doesn't know that Head has 2 Lend-Leases in his hand, so Tiger's unable to effectively convert this card advantage he currently has into a board advantage. Head is just going to play Lend-Leases and suddenly tied on card advantage, and Britain arguably has the better elite cards, the better tech cards for this matchup, where Tiger has naval operations and bonsais. Head has Monties and Shellings, so.
Yeah, good points, good points. And Head able to find HMS out of the Lend-Lease, also on Albacore, so a lot of bombers in hand. What he needs next is an Empire Strikes, because this 0 is definitely going to do some trouble here for Head. How can we respond to that one? Found the close air support. on top of the deck. The most left card is surprise attack, right? So you can pin that 0 at least for 1 turn.
Looks like he's just going to draw for the a way to pin this 0 to try to double surprise attack it likely. Picks up the shelling, which is going to be very good in the coming turns. It does not let him kill the 0, but he can take out this Aichi.
Take out Aichi, pin the 0, then he's still having 2 credits left. Aichi playing close air support, not pinning the 0.
I think he's saving the surprise attack to combine with the shelling on the following turn and just risking taking 4 damage here or risking 0 killing one of these units. These decks don't have the most burst potential. Japan is slightly different because I believe Tiger is running Shiden. However, there's not as much burst potential in air as there used to be. Void to take more damage and play these matches slightly slower and rely on getting more value out of your cards, which looks like how Head is trying to play. And Tiger just removes the Aichi. I think that's the correct call. That's the second Aichi now that's been fully removed. And you're limiting your opponent's possibilities.
Found another swordfish, type 94, with already 2 surprise attacks in hand. So that's a lot of pin and removal potential for Tiger here. And there comes the instant shelling into surprise attack on the 0.
And likely just cleaning up the Gladiator. And I wouldn't even be that surprised if you saw Head play the Albacore. There's not a lot of ground units in Tiger's deck, and there's not a lot of cards that really do much from hand. So this Albacore is relatively safe on board, and now has the ability to be buffed and attack on the following turn.
Yeah, and Head also needs space in his hand to be able to maybe play a Lend-Lease next turn and not overdraw. So it makes absolutely sense to just drop this Albacore here, just don't get the deployment effect since there's no target anyways in Tiger's deck. Tiger found the Banzai. Probably the most useless card in this matchup.
Yeah, it's 7 credits kill Sexton, I suppose. Which, I mean, sometimes that's a card you would run. So
absolutely.
Certainly not doing much currently, but maybe not quite as dead as you might initially think. It is interesting. Head does not seem to be running Piracy in his list, so I believe the Sexton and the Type 94s are the only ground units in the deck.
Tiger is forced to play a Sendai Regiment on a 1-credit Gladiator. That is not really what you want to do. And look at Tiger's hand here. Triple surprise attack, Lend-Lease Albacore Banzai.
And here I think we're just going to see Head do HMS, close air support, and trade out the board. This is one of the downsides of being in Japan Major is these surprise attacks. You have 3 in hand, but you can't do Shelling triple surprise attack or Monty triple surprise attack to deal with these. You can only use 2 to trade with one of them, and then the third one can just be used as a single pin.
That's a good point. I've actually have not thought too much about Shelling surprise attack. That's really a strong combo, and we've just seen it earlier. And yeah, it's really a downside of playing Japan main. Then you cannot really get that much value out of these surprise attacks than with Shelling.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That is absolute. That is a.
That could have been a game-winning ultra, right?
Yeah, that.
Holy moly.
That is a humongous mistake from Tiger, I think, because he has so many one-cost orders, and just with 3 surprise attacks, the third surprise attack is nearly useless. He does not need to take this huge risk. He does not need to play the Albacore. He's able to play surprise attack, then Lend-Lease, and Tiger just immediately surrenders following that.
Shame surrender. Yeah, he should have. He had so many chances to play around this. Maybe he probably forgot it, or I don't know. But that was really surprisingly, and giving Head the chance to equal the score here 1-1. And now we have Soviets versus Japan.
And this, I mean, this one's hard to really say who's favorite, I think, because Tiger's deck is much more designed to deal with these ground units. His main ways of using these surprise attacks is with the naval operations, the Albacores, these cards that only target ground units. So he has a lot of high tempo ways to remove Head's slower units. However, Head just has a lot of guards, he has a lot of healing, he has a few board clears of his own, which Tiger's going to need to play around and work his way to get the damage in necessary to win this game.
Yeah, I think Tiger's best effort is just to stack some, or to develop some big bombers. Like Head is only having Chiker, I guess, in the deck to really deal or to stop them from going phase. It's playing 52k, but other than that, I think, yeah, Tiger needs to put his fate into his bombers, but unfortunately only found the Albacore so far.
And I would be surprised if he actually moves up this Type 94. He can just hold these both back and go for the Raiding Brigade on the 845th. Alternatively, Raiding Brigade is a very high value card in this matchup. It kills Riant Regiments, it kills Chikas, it kills basically everything, it kills T60s. So he could just be holding it back and planning to do Albacore trade on the following turn, or a supply shortage.
Yeah, supply shortage not the worst option here, and then you can just follow up by Raiding Brigade on that E-Shirk later on once the Chiker is there. Also top deck Aichi right now. Also a pretty strong card and probably hard for Head to deal with.
Yeah, this is awkward. Tiger has a lot of very good cards in hand, but they're just all incredibly awkward to play in this current situation. Whereas, if we look at Head's hand, I think Head's going to be pretty comfortable playing the next couple turns, where if Tiger passes or does something pretty low impact, Head just has a 4-cost play, a 5-cost play. He can play out a 2-drop and a 3-drop. He can combine any of these with moving up or attacking with one of these units. It's just a much easier hand to play for Head at the moment than it is for Tiger. Tiger choosing to just go for the Aichi, which isn't going to do a lot with the Chika on the board.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Head not deciding to go for T60 here, but dealing 1 damage to the Aichi. Interesting. So whenever this Aichi attacks now into the Shiker, it's going to die and gives him a 3-2 smoke screen bomber on Tiger's end. But that turn, I don't know.
That turn did feel a little awkward from Head, because this Aichi can now just take out this 845th because of the push-up is no longer protected by the Chika, and, well, that's not the most efficient use of Tiger's credits ever. Looking at Tiger's hand right now, he will happily take a free trade, because there's not a whole lot else he was going to be doing.
He has a lot of cards in hand, but not really much to do. That's really an awkward situation right now for Tiger. And Head, on the other hand, is he taking out that Aichi now, or is he just leaving it there? And yeah,
I would lean towards removing the Aichi, personally, just because this Type 94 is not threatening a lot, and once the initial version of the Aichi is removed, it means removal like Defend in Depth, 32k, is much more permanent. So just essentially taking the first body off the board now while you have the chance, you have the credits to. And then also probably would have leaned towards playing Petlyakov. The advantage of playing this T60 is Petlyakov could be held back by fighters. And this T60 can reach into the front line to attack bombers. However, there's some important deployment effects in Tiger's deck that this Petley could potentially stop, like this Raiding Brigade that we're likely about to see come out from Tiger.
So what is it targeting? The Shiker then? And then he goes with the Aichi into the Ishak, or is it the T60? He decides to go for the T60. Huh, okay. Winter Offensive, top deck for Head, not playable this turn. What can Head do here? It feels a little bit like Head is falling a little bit behind turn after turn here. And Tiger is already developing a board, and seeing a naval supply in Tiger's hand here, this can get out of control pretty quick for Head, looks like.
Yeah, that winter offensive draw is actually quite big because it means that he always has that sort of insurance policy in his back pocket. Even if Tiger plays Empire Strikes, clears the board, makes it this massive tempo play, anything like that, at the end of the day, Head will always be able to fully board in a couple turns. However, how much damage he takes in the process, that's a very different question. Here, I suspect Tiger will finally take this opportunity with the Chaika, potentially with Bombing Raid. Alternatively, he could go for the supply shortage, which would kill the Chaika on Head's turn, which would stop it from attacking. However, not necessarily the greatest supply shortage ever.
What is he hovering there?
It's a Albacore, I believe, which...
Ah, yeah, it's the Albacore, exactly.
Yeah, the Armored Train to do Albacore surprise attack.
There we go. Armored Train gone. Or not. Now he has to go for it once the Albacore is deployed. What can you do with the remaining 3 credits?
So here's an interesting question. Does the Chaika come back in the same position like First Rifles, or does it come back on the far right side of the, like, 272nd?
That's really a good question. I would guess it would come on the right. I think only guard units are coming. Yeah, I don't know. It's still not consistent in the game.
Yeah, in the back of my memory, I do feel like it comes back on the right, which meant Tiger could potentially attack with the Swordfish into the 1/1 Chaika and then kill off the 2/2 fighter that it comes in, the Ishak, with the Raiding Brigade. However, Tiger might not be confident how that interaction works, because I certainly am not. And yeah, if he attacks in and the Chaika comes back, or the Ishak comes back guarded by the Bryansk, suddenly you've just given your opponent a 2/2 fighter to start picking off your 1/2 bombers.
Yeah, that would be a pain in the you-know-what. And Tiger found... What is that name called? Sky?
Rule the Skies.
Rule the Skies, yeah.
Which the naval supply run can't get these units really above 4 health, but combined with Rule the Skies, if given enough time, Tiger could get these units outside of winter offensive range. However, I suspect Head, the first sense that these bombers might start getting out of hand, will likely just drop the winter offensive, clear the board.
And then we just saw that the Shiker spawned on the most right side there.
Yeah, so missed opportunity by Tiger on the previous turn.
But also better safe than sorry. But yeah, he definitely learned now, and we also learned that the Shiker is spawning on the most right, not where the Shiker died.
And it seems like, yeah, Tiger just ran out of time. Waited out the clock, did not get in the attack with his bombers. However, he did win the 50-50 to kill the Shar, which will both prevent Head from drawing a card. That is actually a humongous 50-50 to win, because otherwise Head would have an additional card in hand and a 3-1, no, a 4-2 heavy armor 2 tank on the board.
Yeah, that was really important to hit that one. On the also with the heavy armor 2, there's not too much removal. I mean, there is the Banzai, but it would have been Tiger's whole turn there So it was very, very important to hit that 50% chance there.
And Tiger with Rule the Skies, but no planes currently in his hand. Key draw is looking very good from Tiger's perspective. Tiger must be very happy with that. That must feel like one of your best draws, but I mean, Partisan's Red Banner in the hand for head means that this key will not be the savior Tiger was looking for.
Naval Brigade. But the Partisans is just too good here. Holy moly. Followed up by a Red Banner into a Tony. 3 more credits, and this could have also attacked.
I mean, from Tiger's perspective, what do? You can surprise attack the Tony. You're not dead this turn. You might not even be dead next turn, but you're not really in a winning position. There's more in hand.
Supply shortage and bombing rate to kill the Tony at least. I think he's forced to do this, otherwise it's just too much damage. And with T-34 in hand from head,
Yeah,
you have to,
getting that Tony was a huge win, and Tiger choosing not to play this surprise attack, allowing himself to take this 5 damage. It seems very odd from my perspective, especially knowing this T-34 is in hand.
Huh. That's really interesting. I mean, you might want to get more value out of the bombing rate, killing both units instantly, but that was just 5 damage too much, I guess. What can Tiger do here? He's not having any healing.
I think that was just a oversight by Tiger. I mean, thinking about how the previous game ended with him playing Lend-Lease into that Ultra, that might be affecting his mentality here, where he's just maybe playing too quickly, maybe just forgot that T-34 was in hand. I mean, sometimes you just don't check intel, you take it for granted. But either way, head doing that, taking that
Head ahead.
its advantage, and yeah, head pulling into a 2-1 lead with just his Jagro deck. And if you have 2 opportunities to win with any deck in the game, Jagro's going to be pretty high up on that list of decks you'd want.
Yeah, absolutely. And with this starting hand, it's not looking too bad right now. He has good turn 1 options, followed up by a 20-second on turn 2 maybe, and he has a Desperate Measures. It's not that great against the Swordfish, but it can absolutely make a difference.
And choosing to just full keep the entire hand, interesting choice. I mean, there's individual cards you could argue for or against keeping. This hand is somewhat weak to just an air superiority, which is exactly what Tiger does. I mean, here, if an Albacore were to come out for Tiger to kill this cavalry regiment, suddenly you're in a very, very poor position.
Yeah, actually that air superiority was a very important find there for Tiger. Otherwise, Head just could have played the 22nd, would have developed 2 units on board, would have had additional draw. So it was very important. Now he just developed an IG. And this unit is hard to deal with for Head. He needs to spend 2 attacks into it, or 1 attack and an order. It's not really what you want to do.
I mean, I think you're happy with Tiger spending 2 of his 3 credits on turn 3 to attack with an Aichi. I think you just play 22nd and kill the Aichi in its first form, and that way you can answer the second form either with the Desperate Measures on the following turn or a Type 93 attack into it with your other Type 93. And that's exactly what he does. And I mean, Tiger does have the Empire Strikes on turn 4 with a second Empire Strikes in hand. That's exactly what you want to see going forward. But immediately, it's a little awkward because do you just kill the 22nd now, stop the extra draw, and accept that you're going to lose this Aichi? Do you play with the AA gun to maybe get a trade, heal a bit? Do you just play out another Aichi? Do you pass? A lot of options here. I would like to see the attack. Yep, goes through, attacks with the Aichi. Both of these bombers are going to be removed by head. However, Empire Strikes will immediately clear the board.
Yeah, there comes Type 93, giving the other Type 93 +1 attack. Tiger left with an empty board, but we're going to see that Head is just having the Head's board is going to have the same fate now. Empire Strikes comes down, and Head also left with an empty board now. Found another 15th cavalry into 35T, but Tiger still on 20 HP here. Now the first damage delivered by the Shinodo.
And yeah, this deck is, out of all three of Tiger's decks, this one is best suited for dealing with Jaguar, with the naval operations, with the supply shortage and the Empire Strikes. There's a lot of things that are going to deal with Jaguar's low health units, and if Head is not able to find a feint retreat, Tiger's looking like he's in a pretty good position to just make a comeback into this game. However, if he does go for the Albacore and Aichi, it will lead to a punish by the Desperate Measures fully clearing this board.
Yeah, and also followed up by a 15th cavalry 35T. That's also a lot of additional damage that might just come down there. But yeah, Tiger feeling pretty comfortable here with Sendai Regiment. Also supply shortage in hand, another Empire Strikes. All he's missing is just a few more bombers before turn after these two have been removed. Oh, Wilberwind is really an important fight.
Wilberwind's a great pickup because it means that you don't have to commit to the lower health units to the board to fully wipe it. You're able to get a 2 health and a 3 health unit. So this way, if Tiger does have a board clear, there's a good chance he's just going to play supply shortage this turn to just start lowering the health of these units. And from Head's perspective, you'd much rather see a supply shortage come out on these 2 units than on your 35T and Cavalry Regiment.
Yeah. Because this Wilberwind needs 3 turns then to die, and Shinodo can deliver 3 more damage next turn. Decides to go for the anti-air gun and to supply shortage. Or is he going for the draw? Then he should have drawn first.
Yeah, it's Tiger making some pretty uncharacteristic mistakes in the last 3 games. He might have been really shaken by that Ultra play, playing the Lend-Lease into the Ultra. I think he might have let that mistake get to him. He does choose to play the Convoy in the end, and with finding the Swordfish and the AA gun, maybe he would have done that differently, but picking up the Sonya means he can Empire Strikes, fully clear this board, get back AA gun.
It was very important. Otherwise he could have not killed the Wilberwind, and I mean with the air superiority he could have killed the Sendai Regiment, but not both Wilberwind and Sendai. But this Sonya enabling a very strong play now, clearing Head's board, giving him back the anti-air gun. So
I mean,
Head kind of forced to.
Oh no!
Wait, no! Don't do that first.
Yeah. AA gun is a card we don't see often enough, and I know I have made that mistake. I've been certainly close to making that mistake many a time of playing out a fighter into the AA gun, which it's not an effect that you see often, but it has the text when your enemy deploys an air unit, reduce its health to 1, and you definitely want this key to be a 6-5, not a 6-1 at the moment.
Removed by the Sendai Regiment, and Head really in top deck mode now. And if he's able to find not Sendai Regiment, Feint Retreat or not, or even Albacore can help to find those.
And
Type 94 is not really helping.
Yeah, I mean, you're not facing down a ton of damage yet, so you still have like 1 or 2 turns to draw Feint, but once the 0 comes out, second 0 is going to be a pretty good draw. Tiger's really looking for Rule the Skies, Naval Supply Run. And, I mean, you have to get something to the front line. to play out this 0, and then you just go all face.
So on the next turn, Tiger could even think about, or do you even think about moving the 0 to the front line just to prevent anything going there, or do you just go full face from there on, from Tiger's position here?
I think it depends. If Head plays Feign, I think you consider pushing up the 0. If Head does essentially anything else, I think you just go all face, because you feel relatively confident that you can end out the game faster than Head can find Feign, play it, and then also draw it on the following turn.
Yep, makes sense. And knowing that Head already played the Desperate Measures can just give Tiger the opportunity to go as wide as he wants here. And already having 7 units on board here, this should be pretty hard for Head to deal with. I think we might see... Yeah?
I suspect we'll see the second 0 come out just to really solidify Tiger's position. I mean, I would like to see him attack base with the other 2 units before playing the 0. I suppose it doesn't really matter if he does 0 face and then bomber into the Akita. He doesn't even necessarily need to kill the Akita. He could have just gone all face. Either way, though, this is going to be lethal setup, even through the pin and the Shinhodo attack. This is just lethal on board, and Tiger is going to tie it and take it to a game 5.
Oh, we could have asked for a better story here in the first OCC Clash event that we have here. Game 5 in the finals. Head versus Tiger. Head has to bring Jaggro again.
Yeah, and Tiger has the Soviet air. And I said at the beginning, I think it's going to come down to get a win on their Soviet deck, and we've seen Head's already gotten his Soviet deck. It's certainly not unwinnable from Tiger's perspective at all. He does run 4 Bloody Sickles. He, of course, has the Empire Strikes in this deck. Of course, he has 1-cost bombers in this deck, but I think the Soviet deck is a lot less prepared to deal with Jaggro than the Japan deck, and Head is starting first with a pretty decent looking hand. Still not a Rados, not Feigned Retreats, but a good enough hand to go through the first couple turns. On the flip side, Tiger's hand is also looking quite strong with Supply Shortage, Albacore, and Bloody Sickle all going to be very good answers to Head's current hand.
He has removal for turn 1, 2, and 3 for all of those things that might come there. Might see the first Sickle here. Next turn, Tiger can just play the Albacore, kill a unit, establish a bomber on board, 35T.
This Akita will threaten the Albacore, which is quite interesting. And I really do think Head should go for the Akita here. 35T doesn't do enough. 22nd, you want to hold it back until you get a guaranteed draw, especially with this hand. And he does go for the Akita, which I think is a good play. And Tiger, unless he draws another Bloody Sickle, he is going to be forced to either leave this on board or go for a 50-50, which will have, I mean, honestly, not a huge impact on this game looking at Head's hand, because even if Akita goes face, Head can just respond with 15th Cavalry 35T.
Yeah, even if you lose the 50-50 on the Albacore and the destruction damage of the Akita kills it, you still remove the threat from the board and maybe force Head to play more stuff to enable that 35T ability. Actually losing that 50-50 there.
That's pretty good, because Head could have responded to the Albacore either way, but this way it lets him play Dina rather than commit the Cavalry and the 35T now. And although Dina's a lot slower, I do quite like it, because it is just taking advantage of the board currently being emptied, and then you can wait to play the 35T to potentially take out this Polycarpov we see in Tiger's hand right now. Although Tiger might just pass.
Yeah, with this Polycarpov, you might just... You want to have it for later, right? You want to have it in hand when you find your Empire Strikes as an additional buff for that order. So you better hold it back here, play nothing. Don't play Supply Shortage on just one Dina. Signal Regiment might come down from Head here. Really strong. What answers is Tiger having in the stack for that one? The hammer, maybe?
A supply shortage will kill it eventually. Naval Brigade with supply shortage is a good way to take it out. He is running a couple of Red Dawns, but Head just going for the 22nd, getting the card draw now, getting the damage in with the Dina, not overcommitting into Tiger's many 1 damage AoEs. And here we see if First Rifles comes down, it will be answered by a Sendai. 22nd will draw again, Bicycle Regiment will hit face for 2, and Tiger does not have a way to respond to a Sendai currently in hand. I suppose he can wrap it back to hand, but then it will come down, and Tiger can't afford to give Head too many more card draws. He can't afford to take too much more damage.
Kind of forced to do this over the supply shortage.
This is a bit of a gamble, because if
yeah.
Head doesn't have Sendai, he could overcommit to the board with units trying to respond to this First Rifles, and then supply shortage can come in and wipe everything. But the Sendai does come out, which means, yeah, Head is dealing this extra damage. He is drawing this extra card, and now it's Signal Regiment on the board. He doesn't have Feigned yet, but the amount of damage he's able to put out is certainly increasing with every turn, and supply shortage has to come out now, but you're down guards. You can play both bombers out to try to absorb damage. And he's setting up for Naval Brigade on the following turn, where he'll probably Naval Brigade the Signal Regiment. I don't think he necessarily needs to kill the Sendai immediately. So he's looking like in a fine position, Tiger is. But Head has drawn a lot more cards than he has last game. He still has not found Feigned Retreat or Errata, but certainly more in a much more capable position than he was around this time last game against the Japan sprint there.
Yeah, that 22nd was really made a difference here. I drew him 2 or 3 cards, right? And this could really make a difference over time. And we just see Head has a lot of opportunities here still, and a lot of choices how to approach each turn. And that is really a situation where you don't want to find yourself when you're Tiger, a Jago player that has several options how to approach a turn. And Head able to kill the Polycarpov here.
And
Tiger not really finding his AoE at this point.
Yeah, I suspect we'll see just the Naval Brigade take out the Signal Regiment, limit the amount of damage Head is able to do. And you see, it doesn't have too much of an impact, but Tiger's positioning last turn with the 2 bombers on opposite sides of the HQ it was a potentially very dangerous move, because if you get stuck with a bomber on the left of the HQ, or on the right of the HQ, it means that when the Signal Regiment dies and the First Rifle comes back, it will be to the right of the bomber, and Tiger does not necessarily have a way to kill off his own bomber. So it could potentially just permanently nullify the guard effect of First Rifles, at least for as long as Head chooses to keep that bomber on board. However, Head traded it off, and we're in this current situation where he wins the Akita 1 in 3. That's very important. Lets him keep the 35T on board and push out a bunch more units, which Tiger does not have a response to.
Tiger holding back one of the, or both 15th cavalry, not overcommitting into the position, because Tiger still has 2 Empire Strikes left in the deck. So you don't want to overcommit too much into all this removal here.
And Tiger is getting the First Rifles back, so just on board, this position looks very scary for Tiger, but it really isn't, because he's getting the First Rifles back. Head still hasn't found a Feigned Retreat. He still hasn't found an Errata to draw into a Feigned Retreat. The second Sendai coming out will let him push out a little bit more damage, and that was maybe a potential mistake from Tiger not playing the Wrath to retreat the Akita, favoring just getting more stats on the board. But Head doesn't necessarily have the best hand ever to sort of further push this damage. With the signal gone, if First Rifles is able to come back, he's down both Sendai regiments. He doesn't have Feigned. How is he going to deal this last 9 damage?
Yeah, he has another Type 94, so he can kill the first rifles. Only has to deal with one more guard then. If he's lucky with another Akita hit there, maybe can do it with that. But yeah, these first rifles will stop a lot of aggression here from Head so far. So Head really needs something good to just deal with this guard and just push in this final 9 missing damage there.
And Tiger here, interesting possibilities. He can trade out 2 of these units, or he can play the Blood Red Sky and hit Head in the HQ for 6 damage. Just trust that this first rifles is going to slow Head down enough that Head is forced to trade to avoid just dying, because Blood Red Sky can heap on the damage very, very quickly.
Starting to get rid of the 22nd. And delivering the first damage to face here. Over trading units. Just as you mentioned.
And I suspect Head is just going to fully commit everything in his hand to the trade in the Akita, go for one last rod. Just does Tiger have a void flare? If he does, I'm going to lose. If he doesn't, I'm going to win. And looking at Tiger's hand, he doesn't.
Not yet.
If Head drops both cavalry regiments, and at this point, I think you realistically do, because if Tiger plays an Empire Strikes, what is your response to that? A single cavalry is just going to be immediately picked off by anything. I would have liked to see Head play that last cavalry regiment, because it means playing the last cavalry regiment means your opponent is dead on board. Cards in their hand have to respond to it. This way, you know Tiger can just trade into one of these 2 attack guys, and then suddenly you're back into this position where you need to draw into something.
On the other hand, Head has a lot of options to find these missing damage. Then, right, he has 2 reduce to find bombing rate or desperate measures or feint retreat even. So still a lot of options. But yeah, I completely agree. Why keeping what would he keep that 15th cavalry in hand for? Like,
and with first rifles and naval brigade both gone for Tiger, he does not have any more guards in this deck, which means Scheiden. If Scheiden draw at any point, if Feigned Retreat draw at any point, if Tiger is unable to put on the necessary damage on board to end this game out quick enough, and 35T draw, if Head had played the 15th Cavalry last turn, he would have just won the game.
yeah. Is he holding it again? Now he's playing it. Okay.
So there were certainly points in this game where Head held cards back, played a bit more conservatively, and it was great. He didn't need to commit to the board. There was a lot of AoEs that his opponent hadn't played any AoEs, so the chance he has one is higher. And absolutely correct to do so, but it's important to be able to evaluate when you need to commit and just gamble.
So, what can Tiger find from the land lease here? Nothing, I guess. Supply shortage will not kill the 35T.
Supply shortage in his deck, but that's not going to be enough. Simply, he's just dead. This is game over. Yeah, there's triple checking the list. There's absolutely nothing. Head is going to be
himself.
The Officer Club Clash champion. Finally winning his first tournament, I believe, and Tiger getting very, very close, taking it to game 5, but just not able to cross the finish line once again, ending second.
But overall, well-deserved win, I guess, for Head, because yeah, Tiger just made a little bit too much mistake, in my opinion, today. And yeah, congrats to Head for winning his first OCC tournament. But yeah, also congrats to Tiger for another final approach here. And I'm pretty sure they just will be here in the future and give it another try.
Totally, a heck of a grand finals for our first ever clash. I do want to point something out because I feel like over the last 3 days of this event, we've been talking about this a lot, and now Head managed to make it work without the card. But how many times have we said Feigned Retreat is like the out that the Jagro player needed? And I feel like they never drew it. Did we see it get played in this event at all?
I believe we saw it maybe in Berto versus Noen. Maybe. But yeah, it got played in my game first.
Yeah, you saw it in Jake.
Right.
Yeah.
The game ended immediately afterwards, but it was played.
So it didn't see a ton of value, but I just think it's wild how much that card came up and just felt like it was the ghost card. Nobody could draw it. Didn't end up, again, making the difference here as Head was able to take down that victory, but still wacky that was like that one piece that seemed to be missing in every matchup so far today. But just goes to show that there are decks out there other than just the straight up meta decks that can bring a lot of value. So heck of an event over the last couple of days, and I'm happy to see Head finally notching that first OCC win in their belt after finishing second at the World. So first for Head, and like you said, Spooz, I doubt it will be the last. Let's bring up the bracket to wrap up our day, shall we? Alrighty then, look at this. We got some points to hand out. As we discussed at the beginning of this event, we're not throwing dollars out here right now. We're throwing out points to qualify for the OCC Ultimate that we're going to be having in a couple months. This is the first event that's giving out points. So Head finishing first nets 25 points. Tiger in second gets 18. Berto in third gets 15. Freddie in fourth gets 12. Everybody else you see on this page gets 8 points, and anybody who qualified in the top 38 will walk away with 4 points. So keep an eye on the KARDS website. I think it's going to go in Discord as well. There will be the standings for the qualification for the OCC Ultimate. J King, you're still walking away with 8 points. Probably not exactly what you were hoping for, but hey, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this point system. I'm incredibly excited for the OCC Ultimate, and we see Head likely booking his ticket. Maybe he wants to make one more top 8, one more top 38, just to solidify it. But yeah, Tiger doesn't need a whole lot. Berto, pretty safe, but yeah, 5th to 8th. There's a lot of positions in OCC Ultimate and a lot of players who could still potentially make it. So very excited.
Awesome. Spooz, any last thoughts before we wrap this show up?
Not really. I just want to congratulate Head again. He's really a nice guy. We're also in a shared Discord, and he's always very kind and really a nice guy, and really well-deserved win. Not any mistakes, and yeah, it was cool to cast with J King just to what our first time today, and yeah, really enjoyed that one too, and really looking forward to the next Officers Club Clash.
Right on. Well, thank you so much, Spooz. Thank you, J King. Thank you, Darkness. Thank you, Marktheus, for pressing all of the buttons in the back. All of the players who competed, everybody who is watching as well. You still have an opportunity to qualify for the KARDS Open that will be taking place in March. I believe there's one more qualifier next weekend, so keep an eye out for that. And keep an eye on the KARDS website and in the Discord, and you will get to see the standings for the qualifiers for the Officers Club Ultimate. That is coming up in a couple months. But thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you next time.